Alright, so if you haven't tried this game by now, and maybe even if you have, you've surely asked yourself some variation of the question, how does this crap become so popular? How could a visibly janky, frequently buggy, patently incomplete game become the biggest thing in the damn world? Hopefully, we can take an honest stab at answering that here, but if you feel like the above-mentioned shortcomings should basically disqualify it from even being considered a good game, then it's doubtful I'll be able to change your mind here. The success that PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, or PubG for short, has found can largely be attributed to its tightly distilled formula. Like Counter-Strike did all those years back as a simple mod for Half-Life, the viral popularity of this title lies in how it does one thing very, very well, without any of the frills or peripheral polish that its AAA peers are so bloated with. There are no fancy graphics, no hilarious backstories, and no variety of game modes to please all tastes. It basically has no legs or gimmicks to stand on except for its core gameplay, but thankfully that's where it shines. For those of you who've been living under a rock or maybe hiding in an overturned car for the last year, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is the self-professed ultimate battle royale simulator. Every match, whether you're playing solo or in a squad, begins the same way, aboard a plane which is cut in a straight line across a huge map area, one of a total of 2 as of launch. It's then up to the players to decide when they want to exit the plane and parachute down to the ground, where they can then begin the process of thinning out their fellow players. The buildings and rundown shacks that litter the landscape almost always contain useful tools for doing just that, meaning that the first few minutes of every match generally involve a frantic scramble to assemble enough of a kit to defend yourself. After everyone's on the ground, the play area is restricted into ever-shrinking concentric circles. You're given ample warning as to when and where the play area will be constricted, and an advancing electric blue light field marks the edge of where you're safe to stay. Get caught beyond that blue edge and your health will diminish quite quickly. This in turn forces the large amount of players into confrontation with each other. The longer the match goes on, the smaller the play area becomes. The goal, as you've no doubt guessed by now, is to be the last person or team standing, but how you get there is basically up to you. Remember, the goal is not actually to be the one with the most kills. It's to be the one who isn't ever killed. So what makes this so special? Well, I hate to use Counter-Strike as an example again, but stick with me for a second. When CS arrived on the scene, multiplayer gaming was awash in deathmatch shooters like Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament. Games where dying meant a knock to your score, but an instant respawn soon got you playing again in seconds. Counter-Strike, while not the first to explore this kind of mechanic, upped the stakes in a meaningful way by making your deaths count again. You see, when you die in Counter-Strike, you don't come back until the round is over. While this might counterintuitively result in more downtime for some players, the plus side is that you care more about each death, and by extension, each kill. PubG takes this to the next level, while also managing to remove some of the sting of your inevitable defeat. You see, you really don't want to die when you're playing this game. Matches can be long, like 20 to 40 minutes in a single game is quite common, and finding a good setup, the weapons and the armor and the attachments that you want, is basically a roll of the dice. So when you get some good stuff, you definitely don't want to lose all of that. The closer to the end of the match you get, the more tense the game becomes, as the number of opposing players slowly ticks down. So, realizing you're in the top 10 of a solo match, and knowing the other players are with you in that very small circle, can be a shockingly pulse-pounding experience. But here's the thing, if you die, it takes about 35 seconds to jump into another match. The millions of players online and minimal amount of game modes means that it takes a laughably short amount of time to just try again. What this means in practice is that you cling to every life with white-knuckle intensity, but you're never too badly crushed when that death comes, because you can be playing again in literally seconds. This balance between how much a single life counts and how little a single death kind of stings is what I believe to be at the heart of the game's popularity. However, another facet to PubG's shocking virality might have to do with how it encourages cooperation during team play. Quite frankly, it's hard to think of another game that requires you to communicate with your team more than this one. From the second you open the map on the plane to the moment your health hits 0, you need to be in constant contact with your teammates. PubG is all about planning your next move and relaying information to your squad. Effective communication is really the only way to go about this. Anyone who's played a team-based MOBA or something like Overwatch can attest to the fact that, yeah, teams that communicate and work together are almost always more successful. But on the flip side, those people also know that it's perfectly common for players to simply zone out or just go lone wolf. And you can succeed while you're doing that if you're good enough. A good mid laner can still do their job, and a solid Pharah can contribute to her team without ever paying any attention to what they're even saying. But you try that shit in PubG and you'll see how fast you're back at the menu screen. Even simple acts like pointing out an enemy you see on the horizon is a skill that requires practice and a set vocabulary. This in turn means that getting better at the game is a really rewarding experience, one where your quote, twitch skills are honed in sync with your effectiveness as a teammate. This means that I see a guy, there he is bad, but saying something like contact, 150 degrees northwest on the ridge next to the rock. Now that's good. Of course, PUBG's biggest hurdle, no pun intended, thank you new vaulting mechanic, is its rough around the edges presentation. Animations are an ongoing process of steady improvement, as is the frame rate and performance, but the visual and presentational shortcomings means that simply looking at the game is what makes it kind of a tough sell. There's not much to sugarcoat here. The game often doesn't look great, and its legacy of a buggy early access phase is well deserved. Ultimately, this is what serves as the counterbalance to the praise I've lauded above. If you're bothered by how the game looks or put off by the somewhat unrefined UI, you might feel that the game is, at its core, an incomplete or even inferior product. And that's a valid opinion, really. My only counter-argument is that while its shortcomings as a tightly packaged product might not be up to par, the actual game therein is still a remarkable experience. One that I would strongly recommend, not judging by its cover. Thanks for watching MojoPlays. Be sure to subscribe and click on the link in the description below to check out our suggestion page and vote on what content you'd like to see us cover next.